Sonoma County, they're going to introduce themselves to you as north part of California, wine country. So lots of tourism, lots of economic dollars, lots of people, visitors and permanent citizens and residents, that has gone through a tremendous amount of stress and shocks over the last several years. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Shirley Zane. Shirley is the supervisor with the County of Sonoma. I had a chance to meet Shirley jointly. We were on a panel together for the National Council for Science and Environment back in DC earlier this past year. And I was struck by her take on resilience. She lives it, right? She's actually the one going through it every day. It's not just the fact that we talk about it, but it is how she has lived through cascading impacts of events like fires, then floods, and everything else that goes with it. So I'd ask them to come share their story about it. So Shirley, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. It's
welcome Shirley to the stage, please.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Wow, what a time to be giving this talk with these earthquakes. I grew up in Southern California. I've been in lots of big earthquakes, and sometimes I feel like they follow me. When I moved up north, I was living in LA for a while after my son was born, and then we moved up to Sonoma County. And within about less than 10 days, there was the big Loma Prieta earthquake. So sometimes I feel like those disasters follow me. And when I tell you a little bit about Ground Zero in Sonoma County, you're going to understand why. I am a county supervisor. I was the chair of the board. I've been in county politics for almost 11 years now, but I also wear other hats too. I'm a board member for the Air District for the Greater Bay Area, also a board member for the SMART Train, and also a director for the Ag and Open Space District, and also a director for the Sonoma Water Agency, which provides water to about 700,000 people. I'm going to share some examples here with you today about our partnerships, but with Esri and how we're using that data to really create policy and make a more resilient county. And we're a learning institution. We want people to learn from us. And so we're constantly learning and discovering new things and using science and technology to create better policy. Collaboration is the new normal. You can't do anything by yourself. We live in a country, I've lived overseas. I've lived in Caracas, Venezuela. My late husband was British. And I have a degree also in cross-cultural communications. And I'll tell you, America having this hyper-independence that we have here, it hasn't done us a lot of good, because when disaster hits, the first thing you realize is that you need so many people. And I'm glad to see all of you who are out here today, because we stood shoulder to shoulder for days during the wildfires with the state, with the federal representatives, our congressmen, our state representatives, the National Guard, CAL FIRE, you name it. We stood side by side in order to face this apocalyptic disaster. So I'm going to focus a little bit on how we're using that data and how it is being used and integrated across all of our departments, including our health department, safety, economic vitality, and the ecosystems and watersheds, which you've got to keep safe, which is challenging after fires and floods. So now let me give you a little background about Sonoma County. So Sonoma County is really, no, I'm a little biased, one of the most beautiful places on earth, which is what Luther Burbank said. And how many of you been to the wine country to Sonoma County? Raise your hand. Okay, now when I say the wine country, do not be confused with the county that is just our sister county just east of us. They make auto parts. That's Napa. If you want a world-class wine, and we make about 600 of them, you gotta come to Sonoma County. We are the nexus of the urban San Francisco Bay and the north coast, rural north coast of California. We have, next slide, please. We have cows, and we have cheese, and we have beer. We have beer too. We don't just have wine, we have beer. How many of you ever drank a Pliny the Elder or a Sierra Nevada or a Lagunitas? We've got all kinds of wonderful things that we make, and we have parks. For people who like to hike, we've got 55 parks, and they are incredible. So let's talk about now ground zero. Ground zero. In October of 2017, we were hit with a horrific wildfire. And Sonoma County, over the last, I believe, 2 years, has become ground zero. Our Board of Supervisors declared disaster about 8 times in less than a year. We went from a drought to a flood to wildfires and then to another big flood with literally billions of dollars of loss and economic challenges. The October 2017 wildfires, there was 110,000 acres that burned and 24 people lost their lives. A few hours after the fire started, and I'll tell you this, it's really something that when you go to bed at night, your electricity goes out, the winds are blowing. I had an eerie feeling something bad was going to happen. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, my neighbor started pounding on my door. Shirley, we got to get out. Santa Rosa's burning down. I didn't believe her. She pulled me out. She said, my friends from Fountain Grove, they've come down here. All their houses are gone. And it was a wildfire like nobody had ever seen it. These pictures right here are me up in the helicopter with our congressmen. We went up with the sheriff helicopter. Our sheriff who flies our helicopter and is incredible pilot, former Marine, of course, former Marine. And I looked at him and I said, Paul, we got wind gusts of 50 miles an hour. There's smoke everywhere. Are you sure it's safe? He's, no problem, Supervisor, no problem. Well, it was pretty scary. We were being tossed around, but we stayed up for 45 minutes because we wanted to see all the fires. And you're looking at Kmart burning down right there. We evacuated 2 out of our 3 hospitals. If you can imagine evacuating 2 hospitals in the middle of the night. We had neonatal units. We had doctors taking babies and putting them in their cars to get them out of the hospital. It was absolutely crazy. And I really did feel like I woke up to get this starring role in the apocalyptic nightmare that we lived for the next few days. I didn't have electricity. A lot of people did, and cell towers were down. I don't know if you have Verizon, but Verizon didn't replace their cell towers like AT&T did. So the head of CAL FIRE and myself, the head of the board, we were sitting in this very cool tent because it was just boiling out at the fairgrounds, which we had 5,000 people living at our fairgrounds, including the National Guard. Any National Guard out there, thank you. I love you. And we were kidding. Hey, it's 3 days into the fire, and we don't have cell service. Just a call out for AT&T. Verizon, you need to do better. So I want to go to the next slide now, which shows the destruction. So that's what Coffee Park looked like. Now, Coffee Park, you're going, well, isn't this a wildfire? Yeah, it was a wildfire that came down into the urban area, became an urban fire. And this whole neighborhood burned down because that fire was so hot, it jumped 6 lanes of freeway and devoured that neighborhood. And there were something like 1,300 homes that were lost. Everybody knows multiple people who lost their home because 5,400 homes were lost. And the impacts continue to go on. Of course, some of our most vulnerable people were affected, such as our seniors living on very low fixed incomes. One mobile home park in my district just gone, just wiped out. And suddenly you have a few hundred seniors that have no place to go. We had 40 shelters at one time, 40 shelters. We had a fairgrounds that had over 500 horses and pets. We had people sleeping with their pets. We had 2 giant shelters at the fairgrounds and another one across the street. We had makeshift hospitals. I was calling around to get more nebulizers, their breathing apparatus, and we didn't have enough supplies either. And you're thinking, what? Sonoma County? You're not going to have enough supplies? What? But it was that type of disaster. So then, we're starting to recover, and the atmospheric river hits. And in March 2019, we had a major flood on the Russian River. Now, the Russian River floods a lot, but not like this. We made the national news. I don't know if you saw it, but this town called Guerneville became an island. It was completely and utterly immersed. And that was just this last March. Hundreds of people were displaced, 2,600 properties damaged. I have some friends that own a wonderful restaurant. She's on the Food Network a lot. Their whole restaurant got wiped out. If you can imagine 4 feet of water in your business or in your home. And lots and lots of damages, probably $155 million worth of damage. So here again, you got drought, you got floods, you got wildfire. We had the Napa Earthquake. Anybody know where the 1906 Great San Francisco Earthquake was centered? Santa Rosa. It was not centered in San Francisco, Santa Rosa. So we're looking at the shocks down here definitely very seriously. We like to joke and say that we haven't had locusts yet, but they'll be there. One of these days, we'll have locusts. So a lot of damage with that. Next slide. So one of the things we do as local electeds is that we share a lot of information. We're very involved. My colleague James Gore heads up the Resiliency Committee for the National Association for Counties. I'm the vice chair for the Military and Veteran Services and Behavioral Health Services for the National Association of Counties. We do a lot of sharing of information because we know that's what makes us strong. 2 years ago, we testified before the Senate on water security because of our innovative practices of storing water through better technology and the creation of these radars in conjunction with Scripps and with NOAA and the Corps of Engineers. So what we try and do is inspire other agencies and to work in an integrated fashion because, again, going back to the original title, collaboration has to be the new normal. We have to be in this together. We have to assist each other. When the Paradise Ridge or when the Paradise fires in Butte County started, we sent, I think, 20 people up overnight just to be there to help them, set up their local assistance center, just help them through that whole chaotic period, especially the first few days. So over the past decade, Sonoma County has invested very heavily in data and science, and these are the tools that we use to make good decisions. We collaborated with NASA to collect countywide LIDAR map. We used that data for fire modeling and for flood planning. We used it for day-to-day land conservation and for water planning work for our local agencies. That LIDAR map is really important to us. We've also been able to use these maps for countywide vegetation and habitat in terms of where our parks are. The purple that you're seeing in that map right now, that's vineyards. And then the brown and the greens are different types of forests. We have a lot of forests. Those vineyards actually were instrumental in fire breaks. Does anybody know why that is? It's actually kind of fascinating. It's because, first of all, because a lot of them are irrigated, not all of them, but they're very hardy, and they're irrigated, and they have vines that go very deep. We lost very few vineyards because usually, no matter how hot the fire was, it would come up and stop at the vineyard, which was a pretty wonderful thing. So as we prepare for wildfire season, we're using all this data to evaluate fire risk. And this next map is something that we've worked on also, and this really shows about ladder fuels and how quickly fire moves up those ladder fuels. And this one is also shows a map in terms of the residential areas, and then the white areas are the heavy fuel loads, with darker areas being less fuel. The buildings are in yellow. So you can see that there's a lot of houses in the white areas, which probably isn't a great idea to build houses where there's heavy vegetation. So we're learning from our past successes in vegetation management, and we're doing new practices. And one of the things we're doing is a lot of controlled burn. Our board spent $1 million this year just to do vegetation management. But we're using some more creative ways that we actually, but kind of old-fashioned, which is goats. Anybody have goats grazing on your land? Goats are awesome. Matter of fact, we're thinking about renting them out because, and the UC Cooperative says, let's get a goat.com because people need goats. And they're one of the best ways to control that vegetation in dry grasslands. So in addition to using maps and data to target vegetation management, we're also enhancing our data with communication platforms. And this is a picture of our Emergency Operations Center. This was opened for almost 30 days, 24/7. And that's our staff gathering data. Esri really supported us during this critical time. They gave us personnel, bandwidth, data. They helped keep our servers up. Remember, we had all kinds of cell towers that burned down and allowed more first responders to collect and share timely data. That also is part of keeping the information that we are getting, and thank you with Esri in terms of our partnership. That information was very critical because people need to know what's happening. And so along with Esri, created the ArcGIS Hub, which is a one-stop location for emergency mapping applications and data. We're also adopting new tools like the Esri's Collector app, if you've seen that. That Collector app is a great tool. It increases our efficiency and saves lives. And it gives us that data that we need in terms of recovery, disaster preparedness, and resiliency. Again, the thing that drives our policies here in Sonoma County is what all counties should be doing, which is data and science should be driving those policies to become more resilient. Sonoma County Water Agency, I mentioned, we're working on radar. We've already put in about 6 different radar along the coast to determine when those atmospheric rivers hit. It helps us prepare for flooding and keeps our dams full as well. We also are putting fire cameras in lots of places and using the Nevada Seismological Lab so that we can deploy those fire cameras throughout the county, and it helps us prepare for those emergency evacuations and wildfire response. And then finally, we're educating our community about fires and floods. And so we have the maps. This is the Sonoma Fire Story Map. And were you guys going to run it? That's it. There we go. Is that it? Okay, that's it. It's a story map. Anyway, they're good because you get to get the gist of the story and how it burned. We have another map in terms of the winter storms and flooding in the Russian River. That's another map that we've created. That's the one I was thinking about. Yeah, where it shows everybody running around in boats in the Guerneville River. Yeah. So story maps are great because you get to see firsthand what's actually going on, and the visuals are so important for us to be able to understand how that disaster actually affected human beings' lives. And lastly, we're rebuilding. We've rebuilt, we lost about 5,400 homes. It's going to take quite some time. It's only been about a year and a half, but we've built 514 rebuilt homes. Here's me giving a key to the first guy who built a home up in the hills in my district. There's about 1,900 homes under construction, and then quite a few permits that have been issued that people are beginning to build again. And through those experiences, we've learned and we've adopted and we've learned again. So let me just summarize. Access to information is critical to successful disaster risk management. You cannot manage what you cannot measure. Say that a lot. We've learned through our investments. Our investments is not just data, but it's people too. If you don't have cell towers and you don't have electricity, how do you evacuate people? You know your neighbors and you send your first responders out to knock on people's doors. And that's why there were not 2,400 people that died instead of 24, because we did just that. Integrate. You got to have multiple objectives, and they got to be integrated. Human health, safety, water supply, ecosystem, collaboration. Leaders have to collaborate, and we have to drive that collaboration and model that for local agencies, and we got to reach out, and we got to learn from others. We flew down here to San Diego. The whole team did. The mayor did, I did, the fire marshals, the police chief, the sheriff. We wanted to see what San Diego was doing in terms of wildfires, and we learned a lot. Communication, sharing the fire story, the flood story map, everybody gets the benefit of that. And if you get tired of the fire stories or the flood stories, you can go to the beer trail story also, because we do have that on our Sonoma County website. So at the end of the day, it's all about real lives, and it's about people and rebuilding communities. And I know we often think of like a rubber band when you think of resiliency, but it's a lot slower to me, because we're living that day-to-day recovery and rebuild. The County Board of Supervisors created a whole department. We have 6 people on staff. It's called Rebuild and Recovery Department. We've been able to get millions of dollars out of Washington because we have this department. And we get to mainly do the very satisfying work of rebuilding people's lives and helping people to become more resilient. Thank you so much.